Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members, educate yourself through free webinars and blogs, and even create your own customizable research library. Membership starts for as little as 49 cents a day. Download the Investigators Toolbox app or visit our webpage at www.investigators-toolbox.com.
Is a good case management system keeping you from taking your business to the next level? Crosstracks is the premier case management system for the investigative community. They're the only SOC 2 certified case management software available. Visit crosstracks.com, tell them you're a listener, and save even more. Get a plan in place for the new year to grow your business to the next level.
I want to talk to everybody today about ScopeNow.com. ScopeNow has been a big-time sponsor of this program for quite some time, and I just love their service. I've been using them since the beginning. I'm one of their beta customers, and it's been so awesome to see them grow into the business that they are today, and just how they just keep reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to get more and more information. What it comes down to is ScopeNow is a tool that you definitely need to use if you do social media investigations, any internet research, and really spending less time digging around and looking for information. I think is one of the best points of how ScopeNow can help you. Their AI platform, their analytics are amazing. You really get an idea of what you need. You're reducing the time, you're reducing the manpower that you're spending on doing this research, because they're essentially doing it for you, and they're doing it correctly, which is most important. One of the new things that they're actually offering is this flagging system where you can flag behaviors and really highlight and look out for fraud. If you're doing a lot of fraud research, this is a fantastic tool, and you can set up alerts. So you have particular people that you're looking at, you can actually set up alerts to get notifications when the criteria that you set up is actually is flagged and goes off. It's really, really amazing. And their relationship and association analytics are top notch, really cutting edge and really, really cool. When they brought that out on version 3, it was a game changer. I mean, really being able to see how people interact together and having that relationship analysis is really, really something that's cool. One of the other things about being involved with ScopeNow is their ability to offer webinars. Their team is cutting edge on putting together and getting out really, really great content. If you're a member of ScopeNow, if you know who they are, you've seen them around on LinkedIn, you'll know that they're constantly doing webinars on these new websites that are coming out, and they're really staying on top of it. And don't forget, any reports that you generate, you can actually white label those reports and put your own logos on and really make them look professional, which could equate to more billing for you as well. So check them out today. It's www.scopenow.com. They're a great, great company. They should be one of the tools in your toolbox, along with whatever kind of search engines you do. You need to make sure that ScopeNow is a part of that suite. Scopenow.com.
Congrats to our host, Matt Spaier. He was named Investigator of the Year by PI Magazine for 2021. You can get a copy of this great issue at pimagazine.com. So welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. We have a very special show. Former NYPD Chief of Department, Terence Monahan, joins the show. Terry had an impressive 40-year career with NYPD. He retired in 2021 and is now working in the world of cryptocurrency investigations. The guys will discuss the ins and outs of this type of investigative work. Please join Retired Chief Terry Monahan and your host, Private Investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everybody to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today I have just a great, great show, an incredible honor. I want to welcome Terence Monahan to the program. Terence, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, for folks that don't know, this guy had a job in New York City. He used to do a couple things with the police department, not really a big deal. So Chief Monahan actually was heading up NYPD a couple of years ago, and I think he retired in 2021, correct?
Yeah, I retired. I actually worked for the mayor for COVID recovery and public safety for the last 9 months. And now I'm officially retired from city service after 40 years.
Wow. 40 years, man. Thank you so much. Um, so we actually met at the Society of Professional Investigators officially when you received an honor from them. But I actually met you 2 days before that at another event in the Bronx, which was really cool. So there was a personal injury attorney I do business with that was getting an award, and you happened to be attending that event too. And I was like, "Hey, I'm going to see you on Thursday." So it all worked out. And I think what was interesting was at the time we met, you were relatively new to taking over the commissioner role, right? Or had you been there for a bit?
The chief of department. Well, yeah, I took it over in January of 2018.
Okay, yeah. So this would have been like October 2018.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened, and you highlighted this at the Society of Professional Investigator dinner award, was the bombing that took place in Manhattan. I think it was at TD Bank, I think at 23rd Street, right?
Yeah. Well, he had two bombs that day.
Right.
He put one on 23rd Street and another one a few blocks away.
Yeah.
That was our introduction. That was my first day as chief of patrol and Commissioner O'Neill's first day as police commissioner.
Right.
So it started with a real legitimate bang.
Right. Yeah. So you were heavily involved in doing that. So, bringing those guys to, or it was one individual, I think, bring that guy to justice.
Yeah.
It was pretty quick, I think, that you guys had gotten him, right?
Tremendous. The investigative work that was done to get him into custody very quickly.
Yeah.
Had multiple agencies involved. It was the NYPD and the FBI hand in hand, getting information out, and it ended up being Linden, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Police said because we put out a blast all over the city and all over the region, they identified this guy right away and saw him sleeping in front of a Dunkin' Donuts, engaged in a firefight with him, and finally got him into custody.
Yeah, just amazing police work. I remember just hearing the stories of how that all happened, and just being like, wow, that was that was really amazing. And just thank you for the service there. So 40 years. Tell me a little bit about what made you want to become a police officer, and how you got into working your way up the chain here.
I always wanted to be a cop. It was in the family blood. My grandfather was a Bronx cop back in 1927. My father came on in 1946 after serving in World War II, an old Bronx cop.
Right.
My brother came on in 1971, worked in the Bronx. I didn't have a choice. As soon as I graduated high school, I took the police test. And in 1982, I started, and I was a Bronx cop. Yeah. Working in Fort Apache, the 4-1, where I started.
Wow. So in the early 80s there, I'm a little bit younger than you, but not much. My dad was a high school teacher at William Howard Taft, which was like at the time the third worst high school in New York City. And in the early 80s, when we had like a snow day, because I had grown up in New Jersey, he wouldn't let me stay home. I'd have to go with him to school, and then he would make me sit in ESL classes, in the early 80s in Taft High School. So it was quite interesting. So I guess your brother probably caught the Bronx is burning, but you not so much, right? You caught the the tail end of that, right?
Yeah, 4-1 precinct. When I started, the station house was the only building left on the block. Wow. Everything else had burnt down. It was nothing but vacant lots at that time in the early 80s. Yeah. Now you go back to that same block, and there are apartment buildings, people living there. Every inch of it is occupied. Right. It's tough to park over there. When I was there, you just put it right into the vacant lot, no problem.
Exactly. Or, you just park the car and take the plates off and walk away. I had a buddy of mine, his dad used to do that when we lived in New Jersey. When he was done with cars, he'd take them up to the FDR, and he'd just take the plate, park it on the side of the road up in Washington Heights, take the plates off and just walk away.
And literally an hour later, it would be a shell.
Exactly. I love New York. But that's amazing. I mean, you've probably seen some some things happen in your time. The whole shift of policing, community policing and you're going from the cruiser to community policing and just seeing the different techniques along the way. It must have been pretty amazing to see the evolution there and then getting the chance to actually implement your own policies, right?
Absolutely. Watching how, community policing started in the late 80s with Lee Brown.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't working. Crime was going through the roof at that point in time. And there was too much of an emphasis on the community policing, not on the police work. That's when 94, Giuliani becomes mayor. Bill Bratton comes in, and there was a start of Comstock. That was an amazing time. I was a captain back then, going to the very first Comstocks with Louis Anamone and Jack Maples.
Wow.
And if you didn't know what was going on in your command, if you didn't have answers, they killed you. They were brutal meetings. But it's what brought the crime down in the city. Accountability.
Yeah.
People actually caring about the violence in the commands.
Yeah.
Pre-Comstock, a commanding officer really didn't care how many people were murdered in his command. That wasn't what he was rated upon.
Right.
Once this came in, that's what we did. And then it just kept progressing and progressing. We probably went a little too far at one point. That's when stop and question, became a measure of productivity instead of the constitutional tool that it really is.
Yeah.
They were being pushed to get numbers as opposed to getting results.
Sure.
Caused frictions through the communities. And that's, back in when Bratton came back in the second time, that's when I went back downtown and started to be able to implement policies where we put neighborhood policing in, which was getting every cop involved in the area. It wasn't a separation between the community cops and the patrol cops. We had the patrol cops stay in the same neighborhoods and become that community cop.
Yeah. And
we worked with precision policing, really identifying the bad players in the neighborhood and putting together tremendous cases against them.
Yeah.
Putting them into jail so that, it's not locked up and out. We really hit a perfect balance in around 2017, 2018, under 300 homicides in the city of New York.
It's amazing. I remember.
We look at numbers. You look at the numbers. They started tracking homicides in 1928 in the city. Those 2 years, the only years that were ever better were 1953 and the 5 years during World War II, 1940 to 45.
Yeah.
We had it right at that point. And things have changed, and you're watching that evolution now with, legislation that's come out, the anti-police sentiment, some changes that were done.
Different
we
times.
need to get back to where we were in 2017 and 18.
Yeah, I would probably say we're probably about 150 murders today, and it's this is the second week in July or January. I'm sorry. It's a rough time. It's amazing to me to hear you talk about this stuff, and I see how passionate you are, and talking about the early 90s and being there, involved in all that. And I was at John Jay College. I was actually studying all this stuff as it was like real time. Papers were coming out, they're having discussions, and we were having like ethical conversations about community policing and the benefits of it and all that. And when I distinctly remember all that, so to me, it's like so cool to be able to talk to you about this because who would have ever thought that you and I would be having this conversation here? In fact, Chief Bratton spoke at my graduation. The first time. I think his wife was a professor at the school at the time, I think. It was just amazing to see how that all has changed, and it really is an ebb and flow, right? You see policy work, and then things don't work anymore, and somebody comes in with a fresh idea and it's different, right? But to see where it's gone in the last couple of years, it's a bit alarming, to me personally, just because I'm used to what was going on in the 90s. I missed the 70s, kind of caught the tail end of the 80s, 90s and the pro policing that was going on there. It's definitely a bit alarming. And I have many friends that are police officers right now, and just hearing the things they go through, I'm just like, wow, it's pretty amazing to see it turn around the way it did. I think you got out at the right time.
Listen, it's a lot worse than it was 17 and 18, but we're not even close to the 90s.
Yeah.
The 400 some odd homicides. I think 480 last year.
Mm-hmm.
2,240 homicides.
Wow.
So I think there are enough safeguards in place. Stats still being done.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever going to return to the 90s, but we need to get back to where we were just a few years ago.
Yeah.
Sensible legislation can make a difference.
Yeah. And, you just, throw a pandemic in there too. And, you know.
True.
And then, like, even when you had a couple of years ago when the two officers, I think it was in Staten Island, that had gotten executed, that was really crazy also. Even for me, like driving around, it's like there was just this electricity in the air, like you knew something could happen at any moment. And I remember having to go into precincts, and it's like there's like heavy artillery almost in front of the precincts to get in, like, barricades and guys with big guns and things like that. And you're like, okay, I just need to get a police report. Like, what's going on here? And I distinctly remember being in Brooklyn, and these officers were pulling somebody over, and it was a regular traffic stop, and I'm sitting there in a traffic light watching this all go down, and seeing the look on their faces of just being razor focused and understanding like they could be in danger at this particular point. You see people have traffic stops in the past. It's like, all right, license and registration, do whatever. But no, man, these guys were focused because, there was something different going down. It's very interesting to watch.
Oh, you're seeing that, especially with cars right now.
Yeah.
The majority of our shootings involving cars. If you look in the city, carjackings.
Yeah.
Something that you really didn't talk about for a long time. They're up a lot.
Yeah.
People are actually getting dragged out of their cars by people, and they're taking these cars and doing a shooting with them in the neighborhood and then dumping it somewhere.
Wow.
So, there is an element out there that needs to be addressed, and we need to put together some great investigations, because you have issues with new prosecutors. Let's talk right about Alvin Bragg. His first day in office saying how he's not going to send people to jail.
Yeah, I know, it's a little crazy. And people are talking about it too. I was out last night at a lounge, and folks were talking about it. It's just like, hey, just why don't talk so much? It's all good, like, what are you doing?
And you're 100% right. Why talk about it? Why put out a memo? Yeah. If you're going to prosecute us, why are you letting the world know, the criminal element know, hey, if you do this, you're not going to get prosecuted in Manhattan? Yeah. It's ridiculous. So hopefully he's catching a lot of pressure from all over, and he may rethink some of these policies.
Yeah, baptismal by fire, apparently. Welcome to the club. So I want to take a turn here too, because I want to, the reason I asked you to come on here today is we wanted to talk cryptocurrency and investigating cryptocurrency, and that's kind of your new life, your new world of where you're going here. But before we get into all that, tell me a little bit about like why you chose to get into that. Like, do you have a financial background, or just something that you thought was interesting, and how'd you fall into it?
So it was just a quick meeting. Everyone knew I was retiring. Someone called me up. Hey, there's a company out here that's looking to get involved with law enforcement. They've been doing this work for a while, called Chainalysis. We sat down, we had a meeting, and they started explaining exactly what they're capable of doing, the work that they've done on a federal level and on an international level. I knew very little, if nothing, about cryptocurrency.
Right.
It's a short conversation. It piqued my interest. And with everything in law enforcement, we have to stay in front of ahead of the criminal element. They know this.
Sure.
They are utilizing cryptocurrency on a regular basis. Their belief is that it's completely anonymous. And that seems to be the same belief of most investigators, when it's not.
Yeah. No, and you're right in that point, because it's not. Everything has got numbers. Everything's a
everything's transparent. It's a public domain.
Yeah.
You don't even need subpoenas to actually search through the blockchain.
Yeah.
So it's something that investigators need to really start looking at, because we're seeing it more and more. New York City, Eric Adams is talking about becoming a Bitcoin city.
Yeah.
Miami, Mayor Suarez is already moving towards a Bitcoin city.
Yeah.
General people are investing in it. And the more people, especially naive people, invest in it, the more they're going to get scammed.
Yeah.
More people are going to steal their money. And it's us on the investigative and law enforcement end that have to be able to investigate these sort of things.
So I think there's two reasons why that happened, right? First, you've got all these apps out like Coinbase and whatever that make it really easy to trade and get involved in crypto without really understanding and knowing what it is, or actually even having a wallet, right? So if you have an application you can use on your phone where you can ride into that Bitcoin game and really understand, how this all works, or at least hedge on it, right, with your money, not even necessarily understanding, but just hedging on it with your money. I think that opened a lot of doors for that. I feel also that the government giving out money to people, you got all these extra checks that were handed out to people last year, to try and, help them get back on their feet again. I think a lot of people took this discretionary income and said, oh, I got a few extra bucks. I hear you can get very rich, on cryptocurrency. I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'm going to get involved with it. Right. So I think that there's a trend in that sense too, that folks, now they have this money laying around and they see, on Instagram or social media, all these Bitcoin millionaires, telling you like, be like me. You can do all this stuff, and they really they get rich quick scheme, which is con man 101. It's now just online, right?
That's they're able to do an analysis, and they looked $14 billion last year traded in cryptocurrency to illicit sites.
Right.
That's, that shows you the amount of money in this world that's going around these different fraud sites, gambling sites, human trafficking.
Right.
There's a lot of money. And like you said, everyone saw people making tons of money in Bitcoin, and they feel they have to invest. And it just opens the door for that scam artists to get into that wallet and steal their money.
Yeah. I mean, that whole Dogecoin thing last year was like, it was crazy. And you got a guy coming on Saturday Night Live, and he's, yep. He says something, and all of a sudden it goes right down the toilet. It's like, it was almost like these are what hedge fund managers used to do back in the day, right? Talking things up and then talking things down and letting it go. And it's just like, this is at a whole nother level of how they're doing things. It's pretty amazing.
NFTs and, all these things that are coming out. Some people are making money. A lot of people are losing money.
Yeah. Which is where, folks like you and others that specialize in this stuff, being able to recover funds. I mean, this stuff happens all the time. It's pretty crazy. When we come back from the break, I'll actually get into an experience that I personally had with some of this stuff, and interesting to see how it all kind of hedged out and the exposure there. So we are going to jump out real quick. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back in, we'll just keep hammering down on this topic and talking a little further. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back.
Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Satellite Investigations is the premier investigation resource in New York State. Founder Matthew Spaier was named PI Magazine's Investigator of the Year. If you need investigative assistance in New York State, visit their site at satellitepi.com. Get results, not excuses. Registration is open for the first annual Security and Licensed Investigator Conference in Augusta, Georgia. Gain skill and knowledge from top-tier speakers. You'll learn from the industry's leading professionals in security and investigation on the following topics: practical aspect of death investigation, perimeter and facility security, organized crime investigations for private investigators, negligent security investigations, crimes against disabled adults and the elderly, CADE, C-A-D-E, active shooter mitigation training, how to engage your federal law enforcement partners, investigating officer-involved shootings, and ethics for private investigators. Learn more by visiting cga-solutions.com. That's cga-solutions.com. See the link in the show notes.
And we're back here on PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. I have the incredible honor today to have Terence Monahan on the show. Terence, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Mal.
Yeah, so great to have you here. So great to talk about this stuff, man, because I think, as investigators, when you hear cryptocurrency, it's like, wow, I don't know anything about this. I don't even know where to begin to investigate all this. And you brought up a point earlier when we were chatting about having, that footprint, right? Everything's got a number assigned to it. You just really got to know where to look. And the fact that it is, these are records you don't have to subpoena, which I think is very interesting too. How do folks get started in doing this particular type of investigation? What would be, your company you're working with right now? What would be a situation where somebody would come to you when they had something that happened?
All right, so we've run a lot of different cases throughout the country, and now we're starting to get police departments buying this product, and it's a tool. It's a reactive tool that can go into the blockchain. There are nodes within the blockchain, and it can read that transaction, and it can follow where that transaction has gone through the entire blockchain. I'll give you a quick case that they worked on. This was a drug case in the city. Internet drug sales. So you get a conversation on one of these dark websites, a guy complaining. He bought drugs off of this guy, and he got beat on it. He sent him money on Bitcoin. All transactions were taking,
how dare him?
Taking place on this, and he lists the transaction number that he sent to this wallet.
Right.
So now we were able to take that transaction number, follow it into this guy's wallet. And now the tool that we have, the reactor tool, can now go through that wallet and pick out every transaction that's taking place within that wallet and where it's gone to. That's so cool. We were able to trace that back to a whole bunch of different dark websites, conversations that he was having, people sending him in transactions from those sites, which would be the drug money that he's coming in.
Right.
Following all of that to where he sends out. So eventually we find him going to Coinbase. That's where he's cashing out.
Right.
You also were able to, he went to a bunch of Bitcoin ATMs. We can locate the ATMs that he was going to. Right. So we're able to set up surveillance on those ATMs at the times he was going. We were able to get him going to those Bitcoin ATMs. So now you had photos of him making the transactions, taking the money out. Went to Coinbase, and it's just a simple subpoena.
Yeah.
To them. What IP address, who was these transactions, who took that money out? Again, that identified him, matches up to the guy that we have going to the Bitcoin ATM, and that's it. This can't be done on a, there are public sites to try and follow these transactions.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that whole wallet on a public site. This is a tool that can twirl it all up and give you it all and put it on a spreadsheet that's absolutely tremendous when you go to court. You have to be a techie guy. I don't think your average investigator is going to get a little lost.
Right.
But if you have a guy who's doing this on a regular basis, they understand. We spoke to a group of state police investigators just yesterday, extremely knowledgeable on it. And they were actually talking about the frustration that they have trying to follow this chain on publicly available sites. We explained how we did this, so that this is now something that if you're a financial investigator, if you're a drug investigator, you're going to see this sort of movement a lot. And as more people get involved in crypto, we're going to need to have these tools, and you're going to need specialists, guys who know this sort of work that your average investigator can go to and have them run the analytics to move the case forward. Now, as you talk about people getting their wallets stolen, 30 to 40 major crimes a month right now in the NYPD from just cryptocurrency.
Wow.
Vast majority of them are grand larcenies, someone hacking into your wallet and stealing it, which great hackers, there's so many easy scams to get into a wallet. You know, you go to any sort of Bitcoin event right now, and there's always someone that wants to give you a free coin.
Yep.
So, hey, a free coin. And that's what organizers will do. The hacker will be there too. And he'll be willing, you know, he'll send a thing to your phone. Hey, where's my free coin? And people, oh, wow, free coin. They put it into their wallet, and that hack now steals all your money.
Yeah. So that's something like Robinhood and even Coinbase was doing that for a bit. When you sign up for them, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to give you free coins just because you're putting money in here. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking any of that stuff.
Exactly. Because they're into your wallet.
Yeah.
You know, you put that. These guys, like the criminal element, man, they know this better than we do.
They find a way.
And they know how to steal it.
Yeah.
But at least with this tool, even when you get your wallet hacked, and we can follow where that money went.
Yeah.
And we can follow that chain to the point that there's going to be a cash out. Because once you have that cash out, that's when we're going to be able to use regular subpoena powers and regular investigative tools to be able to identify you through an IP, through a cell phone, through any of that.
You know, that's so interesting that they have this concept, they came up with these things, because if you think about it, right? So you train the investigator how to investigate it, right? Then you got to essentially train the DA's office how to prosecute it, right? They have to understand it. But then you got to make it simple enough that you can actually educate the jury when you're presenting to a grand jury, right? So having a tool like that really helps, right? If you can essentially create these spreadsheets and this map work of how it all works, it's a lot easier to understand when you're trying to put this stuff together, because it's complex.
It's
right?
very complicated when you really look at it. But when you take it and now you start spreading it out, basically making it for those that don't do this sort of work to understand it. Color coded nicely. This is the site he got it from here. This is the sort of stuff he was taking. This is how he cashed out. These are the fraud sites that he goes to.
Right.
That's, that has to be done in such a way.
Mm-hmm.
We did it with Palantir for years, another complicated system that, well, once you have to iron it out and make it presentable, it works. Yeah. That's where this world is right now. That's where this product is going.
That's great. That's great. And do you guys, how do you sell? Like a subscription base, or is it like a per diem type thing? How does that work?
It's a subscription base. So different agencies will buy, if you have 10 analysts,
right,
that are going to actually be utilizing this tool, well, they'll pay for the 10 analysts. Companies do the training, how to utilize the tool. We have 24/7 assistance. We have an investigative team that if you're on a case and you need help trying to decipher everything, they will take it and look at it. They will run everything themselves, give you their view on it, and at that point they can be an expert witness for you too in a trial.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you would need that at some point. Someone's got to be able to explain it in good terms.
So a lot of this tool has been used federally. The IRS uses it. It's taken down some scam websites. It's been used in major ransomware cases, internationally tracking down where the money was. So as the company and tool started, this was all looked as a Europol, an FBI, IRS sort of tool on a national, international level. But then they're realizing, as these crimes are happening on the local level, that the same tool can be used locally to help investigations. So it's really just, Manhattan, Queens DAs, they've taken it now, which hits right on your point that it's great that the cops know it, the prosecutors got to know it too.
Understand it,
and understand it. There's a lot of things. As cryptocurrency usage continues around around the world, we have to learn how to investigate it. We have to create experts at it in departments all over this country.
So is this something that like the Treasury Department is involved with, or I'm sorry, the Secret Service is involved with also?
Yes.
Or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you would think that with the money aspect.
Yeah, this was all really focused on a federal level.
Yeah.
Until very recently.
Right. That's amazing. That's really really cool stuff. Yeah, I had talked about earlier about a scam that I had knowledge of. So, years ago, when we had met some people that were putting together it was an internet startup, right? And it's like, hey, it's Bitcoin based, and this is the theory, and the initial concept of the product was a security related product that would help the consumer control how their data is being used and like who it's being sent to on the retail aspect, right? So you go to these online shopping experiences and they sell your data. Everybody knows they do that, right? So this was giving you the ability to prevent that from happening. And then it kind of took a shift from there that it was having like an online cryptocurrency environment to buy clothes and all this other stuff. So they started like putting these proposals together and doing these things, and it all sounded great. They're raising money and now it's getting bigger and bigger. Apparently they've got big contracts with big retailers. Well, it turns out the whole thing was just a scam, right? So they had like forged contracts, signatures on contracts and things like that. So one of the DA's office came in and just took everything, and like hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin got seized, and now they're still trying to figure out how to give the investors their money back, which is amazing. It's I think it's probably about 3 years now. They're still trying to figure out how to give everybody their money back. Because there were a lot of investors. There were initial investors with, convertible notes, and it's a whole big mess. But it was interesting, like to be a fly on the wall and all that, and see how it kind of unfurled. And I remember I had a conversation with somebody, and they're like, like, you're an investigator. Why didn't you like do more due diligence on this and figure this out? It's like, well, I don't know. Somebody put a signed contract in front of me. Like, I don't know the person who signed that contract personally. I got to assume that there's a signature on there. It's a notarized signature. So somebody notarized it, that it's legit. Like, I'm not going to question that, but yeah, so it happened. And it's definitely an international flavor of how that all happened. And it very interesting to see how it all kind of shifted. And I mean, I'm talking, this thing probably started 6 years ago. So, it was very new, the whole Bitcoin cryptocurrency thing. People didn't really understand it, and the concept, but now you see these things happen all the time. Constantly, you'll get the notices from the DA's office of, oh, yeah, we made this arrest, we did that arrest, and all that. And interesting too. I think it goes all the way back to even Silk Road. Like, I had done an episode with Vincent D'Agostino, an FBI agent, who was involved with being a part of that team, and hearing about all that. And you talk, dark web and crypto. I think that was probably the first, hey, flag, something's going on here, right?
Yeah, well, that again, I know I can't talk deeply about it, but the company was deeply involved in that case.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
A lot of the tracking, tons of season.
Yeah, it was big.
A lot of money.
Yeah, they made a movie out of it. That's how important it was. So we can make a movie out of it, which is cool. So what do you see, like, the future? What are you excited about in this aspect? You have this great tool, but where do you see this going in the next couple of years?
What I see is local law enforcement, major cities, understanding it and investigating it. Right now, it's not being investigated. I can tell you for a fact, a detective catching a case right now sees someone's digital wallet was stolen, has no clue, does not have the tools, is incapable of tracking down who stole that money and getting it back for it. Yeah. As you move forward, and listen, this is a tool that was used by a federal level at federal cases. Once you start giving it in the hands of a cop, they're going to find so many different ways to utilize this tool to solve cases. And that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Once I get a good investigator who understands the tool, utilizes it, he says, wait, I know we can do this, but if I do ABC on this tool, I can do this and help in this other case.
Right.
I see seizures, because you mentioned the Silk Road, the million seized, the amount of money in the case you were talking about. For police agencies, there could be a lot of money that they can get off their hands on, assets that the criminal element has sitting in Bitcoin somewhere, that now, at the end of a case, it becomes the agency's money.
Yeah.
Help put more cops on the street.
Yeah.
If the agency's getting this sort of cash out of a Bitcoin seizure, get them new cars, get them the equipment they need to continue doing the work.
Yeah, but they got to sell on an uptick, though. You know, and that's the other very interesting aspect of it, right? Here you have this currency that's constantly, the value of it's changing, right? So $100 million seizure could be a $200 million seizure if you just hold on to it for a year. And, you know,
or
like,
it could be a $30 million seizure.
Right. So it's like, when is the appropriate time to tap out, right? And in the case I talked about earlier, you know, those were one of the things I was thinking about. Like, okay, well, when's the right time to liquidate this stuff? Because you know, they had said that we're going to liquidate the assets and then decide what to do with it. But it's like, okay, you know, maybe you don't, maybe hold on to it and see what happens, because it looks like the trend is going upwards, and that's the thing. It's so volatile; it does go up and down, that you just don't know. But that always fascinated me, that the seizing of the coin and the value of the coin changing. Like, how does that affect the dynamics of prosecuting the case, right?
So that's part of what you have to do is, once you seize it, you have to document what was the worth that day.
Right.
Or when criminal activities are taking place, that money's going. Well, that transaction happened on January 2nd, or how much was stolen January 2nd, not what it's going to be worth January 5th, or, you know, or not. We have to be able to, within that case, that's what they'll do. They'll document, you know, X amount of Bitcoin, January 1st, worth $1.2 million.
Right.
And it's there, and it's for that investigator, for the prosecution, can say, well, this is stolen, this thing. Maybe work this down, but the date it was stolen, and that's fits the criminal element that you need to do the prosecution.
It's very interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's good that they thought about it to be like, okay, how are we going to approach this? Because, you know, it's a question, especially if you're talking about like a minimal amount of money, right? So one day it's a felony and the next day it's a misdemeanor. Like, it just keeps going up and down, you know?
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Very interesting, you know, and, you know, to have somebody come in and say, hey, my wallet was stolen. It's like, yeah, okay, go to Kohl's and buy another wallet. No, a digital wallet. Like,
my digital wallet, where, what, how? Or someone went on my computer or hacked me, and all of a sudden my Bitcoins are gone, you know, or my NFTs, which is the new thing, which.
Yeah, that's a whole, I don't know. Pete Davidson did a whole thing on the Saturday Night Live on it. I'm like, it still doesn't make sense to me.
that would I've understood some of the cryptos, the Bitcoin, the NFTs.
Yeah.
But who knows?
The concept is interesting.
We got to get ahead of that too.
Yeah, the concept is interesting. I think like the guy who used to be on the Nets, right? Who ended up, he's plays for Washington now, the Spencer Dinwiddie guy. Like, he was selling an NTF based upon his contract, the value of his contract, you know, and he was like one of the first guys to do that. And it's like, wow, that's super interesting. But then he blows his knee out. So I don't know who invested in that or what, but it's just so crazy. Who knows?
Look at how Bitcoin first started. Guys had Bitcoin and they know, with a Bitcoin, I could buy a pizza with it.
Right.
And they were buying pizzas with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, if they held on to it, was $40,000.
Yeah.
That was a $40,000 pizza someone bought.
Yeah. I have a really good friend of mine. He's a cop up in Yonkers, actually, had a similar situation. So he bought a bunch of Bitcoin when it was super cheap, like, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. And he's like, man, he goes, I'd be a millionaire now if I held on to this stuff. He goes, I'm just so darn impatient, you know? Like it got to a particular level and I'm like, oh, I made like $1,000. Cool. Time to tap out. You know? So it's like,
that's why we're cops. We don't know when to tap in and tap out.
yeah, exactly. It's all good stuff. So I think we're going to wind down here, man. This was really cool. This is very interesting. Just a little taste of what's going on. So tell me the name of this software. I don't think we actually talked about it.
The company Chain Analysis.
Chain Analysis. Okay.
The Chain Analysis, you go on the website, you can look at it. If you're part of an agency, you can reach out to me. I'll make an introduction to your agency. They'll do a whole presentation for you. They'll show you how the tool works. You know, there's 2 levels. There's the executive level presentation, which will keep it nice and simple. And then if you have your analysts, the guys who really know this work, we can go deep into it. And if you have a case you're working on, we can give you a quick sample of how the tool will help you along in that case.
Right. So would you sell to private companies if they do like this type of work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know there are some like investigative companies that have a division that do this type of stuff, or you know they look into it. So that's good to know. Terence, what's the best way to get a hold of you if anyone had questions?
My email, it's Terry, Terry, at Monahan-consulting.com.
Perfect. Well, Chief, thank you so much for coming on. This is, again, incredible honor for me. I'm still like giddy that, you know, I was at John Jay College studying stuff that you were actually doing. Like, it totally made my day. Like, how did I get here? Type of stuff. And it's just so cool, man. I appreciate you coming on and just chatting. And I wish you luck with this stuff. I think
Thank you.
I think it's very cool, and it's definitely cutting edge. And I think you're onto something. So
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week on the next show.
Thanks to Terry for jumping on and talking about this fascinating subject. It's amazing how this field continues to grow and expand at such a fast rate. We also want to thank Crosstrack, Scope Now, PI Institute of Education, Satellite Investigations, and the first annual Security and Licensed Investigators Conference in Augusta, Georgia for sponsoring this show. So please support our great supporters. Now, have you thought about joining investigatorstoolbox.com yet? Now's the time to get on board and join the fastest growing digital community for investigative professionals. This Monday, January 28th, Harriet Gold will join Matt on Investigators Insight to do a Q&A on subcontractors. They will answer all your questions on how to use them or how to be one. This meeting's only available for Toolbox members, so join up now. And if you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a new show, so make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.